You're tuned into the Magnet Radio Hour with the Media Action Grassroots Network here in Detroit at the Allied Media Conference 2016. We are live streaming at 96.7 WNUC, low power FM here in Detroit. And we want to give a big shout out to our friends at Philly Cam, collecting this for posterity, and Antoine on the ones and twos. I'm here with Chad Johnston of the St. Paul Neighborhood Network, based in St. Paul, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and again, evidence of the wide national reach of Magnet for folks up north. And Chad, I was wondering, I know you just put on a Magnet regional gathering in May. I was wondering if you could tell me about, you said some 70 people who came to be a part of the network gathering there. Could you tell us more about how that went?
Sure. Yeah, no, Voices for Racial Justice and SPNN, they're the anchor members in Minnesota, and Voices for Racial Justice really drove this gathering. SPNN hosted it. And it was a gathering, probably about 80 people of folks working kind of at the intersection of racial justice, racial equity, and culture and arts. And it was an all-day long event of just trying to kind of contextualize what media justice meant to the racial justice movement, and how we might, continue to push against the challenges that we have. And in Minnesota right now, it's super heavy. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on.
So what's going on there? Tell us a few things that's happening in town.
Well, you know, we've got a huge Muslim population that's being really vilified in the media and treated really, you know, the narrative is pretty horrible, and it's one of the largest Somali populations in the United States, in Minneapolis. We've got that. We've got,
indeed. So nationally, when people talk about the immigration issue, they think about Texas or Arizona.
Right. No, Minnesota has a long, long history of the Hmong population, Somali, Karen. I mean, it's a really, ethnically, it's a very diverse area. It's not as white as it sounds, for sure.
Right. And you all had a police killing in the last year.
Yeah, we've had that, and a lot of school violence, and I mean, just a lot of we're challenged with a lot of issues right now, and so I think it was good to have Magnet as the platform to really gather people together and connect how technology and media can help advance our missions and also change these narratives that are really, they're driven by commercialism and racism, and it's not what's really happening in our communities, both the national and the local dialogue. So I think what, our next steps are kind of figuring out, now that we've mapped these resources, we know who we all are in the room, how do we grow that, build that, and then how do folks use the skills that Voices for Racial Justice has in terms of community organizer training, how do they utilize the tools and technology that SPNN has, and how can we kind of, Wonder Twins unite and make some stuff happen.
Right, exactly, yeah. Our folks at Urbana-Champaign and Penn Media Center were all there. Had a few folks there for the gathering as well. And, I was watching from afar and really impressed with the kind of work y'all doing. And one of the slogans, I know of Voice for Racial Justice, who's going to be on next, is the idea that we can, out of stories, build movements.
That's right.
And it's important that we go out there and collect those stories. Can you just talk about how, as a media, a tech person, you help get those stories out?
Tell about SPNN's experience?
Yeah.
Or, I mean, SPNN was originally founded as just a public access TV station when, in the early 80s, it was new and interesting and based on the First Amendment, allowing people to be in the TV world, and that was exciting. I think SPNN has sort of evolved with the technology and tried really hard to advance that, to let people tell stories on whatever platforms those might be. And so that's everything from, we still teach anyone that wants to learn to use a camera and an editor, you can be in and out in 6 hours or whatever, but then we have longer term sort of mentoring projects, usually for communities of color, low income, women in particular in documentary filmmaking, and we really mentor them over weeks and weeks and weeks on how to do everything in the storytelling process. But then we also teach people just how to use basic technology to build a resume, to get a job. And I got this question the other day that was like, well, how's making a documentary and a resume, how's that the same? And I said, well, a resume is a powerful story. It's a way for someone to represent themselves that they may have never been able to do, and that's just as powerful as telling the story of your neighbors or your community. And so what we do is facilitate that process for anyone and everyone. But with Magnet and Voices for Racial Justice, we get to be real strategic about the kind of stories we're trying to tell. We still let anyone come in, but as an organization, we have a commitment to that sort of arts, equity, and technology. And how do we make those things come together to change our community, change the world?
Great. And how can folks find out more about SPNN?
It's pretty simple, spnn.org. That's all our classes, all our schedules, all our content is all there, and you can see the stuff that's happening in the Twin Cities.
Great. Thanks, Chad Johnston, for being on the radio with us.
Yeah, thanks so much, man.